Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2023. This webinar is a collaboration between the Bono SG, the 5 Community Development Councils, National University of Singapore Faculty of Law, the Singapore University of Social Sciences School of Law, the Singapore Management University School of Law, the Singapore Association of Social Workers, and the Singapore Corporate Counsel Association Pro Bono chapter, supported by the People's Association. I'm Samson Leo, and I'll be your host for this webinar. First, we have some housekeeping matters for joining us today in today's webinar for dealing with creditors. So our first few housekeeping matters are as follows. Today, we'll be using Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any point during the webinar and also upvote any questions that you might be interested in. Number 2, if you have a smartphone or tablet with you, just launch your internet browser to www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Next, key in our event passcode, which is LAWCDC 2305. as shown in the slide. Alternatively, you can click on the link shared in the chat function to our Pigeonhole link. If you are viewing this webinar on your desktop or laptop, you should have already received an invitation to Pigeonhole. Thirdly, a link will be provided in the chat function later to access the handouts that will be available for today's webinar. The link will also be in the follow-up email that you'll be receiving tomorrow. Lastly, please note that today's discussion is not intended to substitute any form of professional legal advice. And if you require specific legal advice, please consult a lawyer. With that, I would love to introduce today's panelists. We have Ms. Toh Wei Yi, Ms. Huey Min, and Dr. Julia Lam. Wei Yi is a partner at Harry Elias Partnership LLP, who specializes in dispute resolution, including litigation involving issues of contract, banking law, and employment. Huey Min is the head of agency of Counselling Singapore. She started as a volunteer and is a founding member of Counselling Singapore that was set up in 2004. In addition to assisting debt-distressed borrowers in finding a suitable solution and obtaining peace of mind to move on in life, she believes in equipping individuals with financial knowledge and skills to become more financially capable and hence more financially resilient and self-reliant. And last, we have Dr. Julia Lam. She's a consultant forensic psychologist, and she currently serves as an advisor on the board of One Hope Center, a charity that provides counseling for people with behavioral addictions such as gambling and spending addictions. She specializes in forensic psychological assessments and provides report on medical legal issues for court purposes. Wei Yi, Huey Min, Julia, thank you for joining us today. And to you in the audience, thank you for tuning in. By the end of this session, you'll know the common types of loans, you'll know why it matters, the impact on the borrowers and their families. And lastly, you get to walk through a few common issues before taking the loan and facing repayment difficulties and what happens to a borrower defaults in making such repayments. And with that, let's get started. So here are some common classifications of loans. We've suggested looking at the loans through 3 different aspects. So the first aspect is whether the loan is secured or unsecured. I think a lot of us would have encountered some of these loans, like the secured loans when we take a mortgage for our house, or some of the unsecured loans where we are taking a personal loan or even credit card debt. Another aspect that we often see is loans can also be classified on whether they are personal loans or business loans. So personal loans will be loans made under your name, And business loans might be loans made to your company. Yeah. Of course, one thing to note here is that sometimes business loans tend to cross over and create personal liability. So this is often the case when a business borrows the money, but the individual has to give a personal guarantee. And last, we have the third aspect and the third classification is when we are borrowing money from legal lenders like banks and licensed money lenders, or we are borrowing money from unlicensed money lenders, such as loan sharks. So with that classification, I hope it gives everyone a good idea that we'll be talking about multiple types of loans later this evening. And as we know, loans are a very common part of our day-to-day lives. Let's look at some statistics. So you can see that our household debt has been steadily increasing since 2003 all the way until now. And to date, we are looking at a household debt of 358,973 million. So that's about 358 billion loans that all Singapore households bear. That's a huge number. And we have seen that it's growing. And this is concerning because it is very unfortunate. We are also seeing the number of bankruptcy applications increase. It has been increasing 28% in the last 3 years, from 2,833 to 3,648. And if you or someone you know is facing repayment difficulties, know that you're not alone, because the Credit Counselling Singapore has counseled a lot of such cases. And Huey Min, this would be a good time to hear some of your thoughts. Like, could you share some of your thoughts on what are these statistics that we've just seen and how does it?
Okay. Now, okay, sorry, I can't quite see the numbers, but basically, people filed for bankruptcy, not all will become a bankrupt. That is one thing. And of course, people who wish to not being sued or becoming a bankrupt, I think they can always come to us for credit counseling to explore other solutions, including our debt management program. Okay. And we will also share with them other alternatives like, talking to the bank or maybe applying for a debt consolidation plan, if they're suitable. So they don't have to become a bankrupt just because they owe money and cannot pay. Yeah, I think they should explore other solutions and choose bankruptcy as a last resort. Yeah. Thank
you, Huey Min. And so next we explore a little bit more about the impact, right? Like why does this matter? Why do people borrow? And what are some of the impacts on the borrowers and the people around them, their family, their loved ones? Huey Min, following up on what you shared earlier about the work that CCS has been doing, can I get some of your insights and observations on why people borrow?
Okay, people borrow for various reasons, to be frank. Yeah. Okay, sometimes it's because due to employment issue, meaning that they may suffer a pay cut, and of course, worse is unemployment. Okay, and of course, the worst is unemployment that is a very prolonged one, or with another issue like medical. Okay, and of course, there will be people who also overspend because they forgot that borrowing money to pay for things you need to pay back. Okay. Yes. So they overspend, and that's why they chalk up a lot of debts. Some is, like I say, due to medical reasons, or sometimes due to business reasons, and of course, a lot of times people, when they found out that I do credit counseling and they ask, oh, you deal with the gamblers. Frankly speaking, there are people who got into debt because of gambling, but not everyone. Okay. A lot of times it's a combination of several reasons. It could be because he has a debt problem and he hopes to solve the debt problem through winning big. So he's going to gamble, or it could be he's just a gambler. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes people play the stock market, and to them is that, oh, I lost in investment. But frankly speaking, if you're punting, it's just as good as gambling. Yeah. So when a person is in debt, the problem is not just about the person is in debt. The family will be affected. Okay, because money not enough, right? So there will be tension at home. So for couples, oftentimes there'll be tension, quarrels, and of course, there are cases that it may end up going separate ways. And of course, when the parents quarrels, it affect the kids, and it basically is creating potential social issues when this is not being addressed properly. Yeah. So these are all about that issue a person has, but it's the people around him or her that will also be impacted. So it's going to become a social issue.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Huey Min. Julia, in your practice, do you see that impact on the people on the borrower and of course the people around the borrower? What have you seen?
The impact would very much depends on whether the borrower actually share that issue with their family. So the borrower may decide to keep it a secret, so the family may not know, but find the borrower becoming like more moody or very agitated, easily irritated. The moodiness may affect the rest of the family as well.
I see. And Julia, I also want to rewind a little bit because Hui may mention that sometimes people borrow and they borrow for many reasons. Sometimes gambling is a reason and they just can't control themselves.
Yes.
What have you seen in your work?
So I have seen people borrowing because they have a gambling issue, as well as like Huey Min said, they have an overspending issue. So like shopping, buying, particularly buying online. So it's very convenient and easy. So they may easily overspend.
I think I might be guilty of that. It's very easy to order stuff online. Yeah, I might be a little bit guilty of that. But if someone in that position, how would they know that they have a issue that they might need intervention or they might need some external help?
Most of the time, they don't think they have any problem. They live in denial in a sense. Yeah, so they may think it is a small problem, or they may think at the end of the month when they get paid, then they can pay off the debts, they can pay off the credit card bills. But sometimes it may not be the case. Say if they suddenly lose the job, then it will become problematic.
Yeah.
Sorry, on this note, I'd just like to share something, for people who wonder whether they have a debt issue or not.
Yeah.
Not okay, due to overspending or whatever. I think one thing, go and check your credit card bills for the, take a look at the last few months. Is it increasing? If it's the outstanding is increasing, it is actually a red flag.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's quite a good practical.
Yeah. So that is one thing. And of course, for the worst, the worst case, or the bad case will be if you miss your payment and if you start receiving phone calls. This is really signs telling you that you better do something about your debt issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very reassuring.
Yeah.
So I guess, my spending habits are so far.
You are only paying the minimum as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, just now
Yes.
based on what Julia was sharing about what was it that you were saying that
the denial part?
The denial part?
Or the snowballing?
Problem? No, I mean, like, say, just now I mentioned about the family affected, Julia, to confirm that sometimes they feel moody and then other people will get affected, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's another thing. He becomes not productive at work. Yeah. And then when he's not productive at work or he starts receiving phone calls that's chasing him for payment, that is going to impact his work performance. And
then it's a vicious cycle after that.
He might lose his job, you see, because
then he can't service the loan and
it's going to be even worse. Yes. Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Wei Yi, is there something that you see in your practice, especially dealing with employment? Is this what you've seen? Like some people being dismissed or some employees not performing because of this kind of stress that they are facing?
Well, I think very often, the reason is not informed to the employer. So sometimes, unfortunately, from the employer's point of view, the lack of productivity, the poor performance at work, that is inevitably going to lead to, some consequences, the worst of which is termination. So unfortunately, I think it's tough. For an employee to, I think it's an impossible situation for the employee to share that with the employer. I think maybe what's a bit more worrying is that, it's as an extension of the social issues that come up. Some may turn to crime, unwittingly. There are situations people steal from their employers, when they are put in charge of funds for the company. Then, I mean, an unfortunate situation where some start borrowing from loan sharks.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they just end up being runners, you know, for loan sharks, and they will end up committing a crime, you know, and then, you know, then it's a cycle, you know, it's a vicious cycle. So perhaps, I mean, you know, how it affects a person, does it escalate into violence, you know, with their family members or people around them? So yeah, these are slightly more extreme results of it, but it does happen.
Yeah, I think some of us may recall a few years back, there was cases that reported that, you know, the person was in debt and resorted to really, you know, extortion or something like that. And in fact, one case I remember, the person just killed himself together with the family members. So it's really sad.
You can really see the impact.
Yes.
The impact of being in debt.
Yes.
It's really.
So I would like to really say that if a person is finding it difficult to service his debts or need to keep borrowing to take care of his existing financial issues, it's really high time to look for proper assistance to address the debt issue before things get worse. Yeah.
Great. And I think this is a very good segue into our next segment, where we'll be having our audience join us on this journey of taking a view of how a hardworking parent is looking to borrow money to tide him through a rough patch. And we'll be looking at the before, during, and after of the taking of the loan. And from here, I think it will really illustrate the difficulties and the challenges that our panelists tonight have shared. Right? So in our scenario, Steve is a 50-year-old father on a single income. His income is just barely sufficient to cover his expenses from month to month. And he has hardly any savings left after each month. His wife helps out with odd jobs to supplement the family income, but that's really not enough. And the tricky part for them is that their eldest son will be starting university in 4 months' time, and they have 2 other school-going daughters. And so it was with this context that it was very unfortunate Steve was retrenched, and he has been on the job market for the past 2 months. He wasn't able to find a job. And one day, he received a WhatsApp message that looked kind of like this. Huey Min, you know, what should a borrower consider when they are looking at SMS message or a WhatsApp message? It's so tempting like this, where, you know, they can talk about so easy, you know, just borrow 10K, 20K.
Okay, let me put this way. A licensed money lender or the bank, they are not allowed to do this type of advertisement through SMS. So if you receive an SMS telling you that you can take a loan easily, instant loan and attractive payment arrangement, these are confirmed unlicensed. So never respond to it. Okay, you just go and get yourself into big trouble. Yeah.
Okay.
And
nice.
I'll just extend a little bit. You know, in fact, whenever we want to consider taking up a loan, I think just try to remember this word PAO, PAO. Okay, almost like almost like the PAO that we eat, but it's PAO. So the thing is that first thing, think of the purpose. Why am I thinking of taking up a loan? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you cannot take a loan because you would like to have something. You know, it's one thing, but the question is always not the question. The point is, it's always advisable to save up for something that you really want. Okay, but sometimes it's a need. The situation really calls for it. You know, that you really need. For example, the Steve. Okay, assuming one morning wake up, realize that the water got that there's water on the floor near the fridge because the fridge has broken down.
Yeah.
Okay, and like you said, he doesn't really have savings, so he has to go and get a new fridge, right? Yep. So in a way, it's almost like a need. You can say so, but then the question is, can he afford to take a loan? right? So that's the A part of the POW. First purpose, yes, there's a need. Second, affordability. Now, assuming he still has a job, okay, and assuming every month he can safely squeeze out $50, $80. So in other words, if you're going to buy a fridge, then he may want to consider one, assuming he's going to take up an installment payment loan to buy the fridge. Then the money installment should be within his, the $50 that he can squeeze out every month. So maybe buy a fridge that is just basic function, can serve the purpose and not something fanciful with the ice cube, with this and that, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then of course the third one will be the O, POW, PAO. The O is the options. Now, in fact, he may want to consider buying a second-hand fridge that, maybe it just cost him $100 and $200, that perhaps he still have it, instead of taking up an installment paying loan, which can be very expensive if you really calculate the number of months you need to pay for that item. Or maybe if he goes somewhere to see that anyone who has an old fridge that can be given to him so that he doesn't have to go and buy a fridge at all. So, I mean, it's good to just ask, what is my POW before I sign up for another loan.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's keep in mind what Huey Min shared on the PAO, the purpose, the affordability, and the options. Yeah. So I see some questions coming in from the audience tonight. Thanks for sending in the questions. Since we are this topic on this SMS message, which Huey Min you shared, it is not no licensed money lender should be sending out such messages, right? So that implies that this message probably is an illegal money lender.
Yes.
So one of the questions coming from the audience is there even a legal obligation to pay back an unlicensed money lender? And perhaps Wei Yi might be in the best position to share.
Okay, this should not be taken the wrong way. Okay, but under Singapore law, the loan that is taken out from an illegal money lender is not enforceable in a court of law. Okay. However, their methods of enforcement usually do not
doesn't go by the law.
They don't involve the courts. Okay. So you are looking at situations of harassment.
Yes.
They will harass you. They know where you live. Find out where you live, maybe where you work. They'll harass you. You harass your family members. Okay, it will be a source of distress. I have seen situations where they go to the workplace of the borrower, and that becomes an issue with the employer. And the employer has no choice but to terminate the employee. I mean, it's not that the employer is unsympathetic, but there is a certain amount of risk to the employer and to the rest of the employees and to the premises.
Especially if you got a gangster turn up at your place of business.
So the issue is that, yes, technically under the law it's unenforceable, but the consequences are much more far-reaching than just a letter of demand or what. That's not you're looking at that with a licensed money lender, with a bank. They will write you a letter, they give you a phone call. And that's not what you're going to have if you have unlicensed money lenders.
I see. Well, Wei Yi, then there's another follow-up question here, right? Because one thing you mentioned is that the loan sharks or the illegal money lenders, they're going to go recover the money not legally, right? They won't follow the legal mechanisms to recover the money. So they're going to hang pig head lah, paw blood lah, anyhow pain lah. That's the picture of what we see, right?
Yeah.
So one question coming from the audience here is, what can be done to mitigate this kind of harassment if someone is found to be in that position, or worse, they are innocent person? It happened that they bought a house from somebody else, and somebody else was the one that was borrowing from the illegal money lender.
I mean, to be honest, the only avenue for you is to report this to the police. Okay. And I mean, right now you don't see a lot of it in news, but I think there was some points in time where there were a lot of such situations. And sometimes, unfortunately, reporting to the police once or twice may not enough. But I think if it really becomes a problem, then I think something can be done. The police can do something about this. I mean, but this is a case-by-case basis. There is no standard procedure as to what a certain procedure the police will deploy, when such things happen. But I suppose maybe the immediate reaction maybe stepping out of patrolling in that area, where there are many known incidents of such harassment. But unfortunately, I mean, for us citizens, that's the one thing you can do. You can make a police report. And there is sometimes, unfortunately, a limit to what the police can do. So really, I mean, if you're the innocent person who bought the house next door or bought the house from a debtor, that's just really unfortunate. But if you are the debtor, please, don't do such things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wei Yi. All right. Next, we actually have a upvoted question about like the narratives, right? That we share. That there's this stigma of borrowers that they are in debt because they overspend, or that they maybe make some life choices that are not ideal, right? But then the question, the audience member was also raising the fact that, but then are there also cases where the loans are actually like necessity for survival? And then maybe are there any like even positive outcomes coming out from taking such a loan?
Okay.
Yeah, Huey Min,
let me
please.
just say something here. Okay. One thing I can say is that for us who do credit counseling, we ask the reasons we ask the help seeker, how you get into debt. To me, is for you to reflect what was the reason. And if the reason is overspending, then please do something about that. Okay. So we are not there to make a judgment. We are just collecting our statistic and data.
Yes.
Okay.
And helping them out.
Yes, and helping them out. Yeah. So the thing is that yes, there are times that people take a loan because of our necessities, really because due to medical reasons, or maybe for further studies. Okay, I want to talk about this. Okay, talk about further studies. Okay.
We'll definitely keep this.
You see, there are different types of loans, as you mentioned in the opening, right?
Yes.
Yep. There are different types of loans products meant for different purposes. So if I'm going to do my further study, and assuming I'm a Singaporean, okay, and I want to do it with the local university, then frankly speaking, take a student loan from the university, or from banks, the interest rate will be very attractive, and I don't start making payment until I graduated. Okay. But I do come across cases that not so much for local U, but they do private university. Okay. Now, even for private university, I think even if you take a type of personal loan, the interest will still be more attractive than you sign up the cost using your credit cards. Because credit cards is easily 24 to 28% nowadays. All right. But if you take a personal loan, it's probably less than 20%. A study loan. A study loan, it's still going to be, and if it's local U one, I think it's just a single digit loan. So that means use the correct loan type, for the
right purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So, to the audience, I think we have covered this this story, and then now the story evolves. Right? So Steve, because he saw a lot of this advertisement at the HDB void deck, he saw a lot of police advertisements say, don't borrow from illegal money lenders, loan shark will ruin your life. He saw all that, and he also saw a lot of advertisements about scams and SMS scams and email scams. So he was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to respond to this SMS. So very lucky for Steve. In our scenario, he didn't reply to the message. He instead went downstairs. And downstairs he saw some money lender shop, and he was hoping to go into one of these and go in and see whether he can borrow the money, because his son is entering uni like really soon. And that's actually tying back to what you just shared, right, Huey Min, about right loan for the right purpose. If the real urgency was getting the loan for his son, maybe a study loan might be more appropriate than trying to get a personal loan and take the cash.
Yes. Yeah, I was really, I mean, if his son is going to the local university, frankly speaking, just check with the university. They are likely to be able to give him a student loan through a bank, I think. Okay. Yeah, but if anything is that because Steve, normally they will ask the students' parents to be the guarantor.
Yes.
Yeah, and since Steve is not having a job at this juncture, it may be not possible for him to act as a guarantor. So what he needs to do is to find maybe a supportive friends or relatives who has a job that can act as a guarantor for the son's loan, if anything.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. And for this case, right? So let's say Steve, he's really borrowing the money. He knows about this study loan, but he still needs his day-to-day expenditure, right? Like buy the fridge that broke down, like you mentioned, or he needs to buy groceries and feed his family. This kind maybe you really need like cash.
Oh
And
yes.
yeah,
In fact, Julia and I earlier on was just discussing, something similar to it. We were just saying that for someone who is really in financial needs, okay, the person can actually go and seek help from the social service organization, SSO, or the family service center.
Yes.
We have many family service center that is located in the different parts of Singapore that can provide advice and services. But I would think that when it comes to money issue, it's always good and important and sustainable if there's a job.
I see.
Yeah. So maybe go to the WSG. There is this career conversion program. And for this CCP, what I found out recently is that they are basically training people for the industry that require a lot of manpower. So it's almost like there will be job for you. Okay.
I see.
So if the person is placed on the CCP, basically my understanding is that the person is actually attached to a firm. So he will be getting a salary while he's being trained. So there will be income for Steve, while he is trained with new skills that hopefully can keep him
upskill.
Upskill and
more likely to get a better job.
Get employed, Yeah.
Great. Great. And so in this scenario where Steve now is in front of the loan officer for the loan, right? Wei Yi, is there some things that he should be concerned about, or what should he look out for? Or what should he be expecting when he's, trying to apply for a loan?
Well, I think first and foremost, when he goes to the shop, he should try to ensure that it is indeed a licensed moneylender, as opposed to an unlicensed one that's masquerading as a licensed moneylender. Usually they will have their license prominently displayed in the front of the shop. And he should actually just look up the registry online, which lists out all the licensed moneylenders in Singapore. I believe it's on the Ministry of Law website. So that's something he should check. But that being said, usually illegal moneylenders don't have physical premises, and certainly not in a very visible location. So now, assuming that this is a licensed moneylender, what he should do is he should certainly read the contract very carefully. There will be a contract for him to sign, and it should contain all the key terms like the loan amount, the interest. I think the interest is very important. It should not be a very high interest. It should be nothing beyond 4%.
4% per month.
Yes. I mean, that's the maximum. It can range between anywhere from 1 to 4 usually. Then the repayment period. Okay. Maybe, I don't know, sometimes there may be consequences of non-repayment, depending on how long the period of non-repayment is. So he should read the contract very carefully before he signs on it. It should match what he understands to be what is being extended to him, what is said to him by the officer in the shop. It should not differ, because if it differs, then what he is bound by is what is on paper and not what is verbally told to him by the representative in the shop.
Okay. And Wei Yi, is in that signing up process and the loan application process, is it normal if the loan officer has to take his NRC, make photocopies of all that?
Copies. They will have a record of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, the key is that it mustn't be an unlicensed money lender. If it is a licensed money lender, they are regulated,
Yeah.
and there is that level of safety for the borrower.
Okay. So now Steve successfully got the loan. He took some cash. But I want to go to Julia and get some of your thoughts on this. So now Steve got this bundle of cash, which is enough to last him for like maybe the next 1 or 2 months. There's a small gambler side of him that says, hey, if I take this 1-2 months money and maybe I go and buy a Toto or buy 4D or I bet horses or I go casino, maybe I can turn it into 10 times the amount. Maybe I can use this amount to pay off my entire house loan mortgage and my kids' education. What do you
This
see?
sounds like magical thinking.
Yeah.
A bit
Yes.
of magical thinking. I think Steve knows himself the best.
Yeah.
So if he may have a gambling problem, he may want to give the money to his wife and trust the money to his wife to keep so that it can be used for the next 1 to 2 months. Instead of him going to maybe the casino or the Singapore pool to try his luck.
Because Steve's mind is like, this money is going to be used up in 1-2 months anyway, right? Why not just give it a shot?
Like I said earlier, so he is magical thinking. So he may not be able to win anything, but then he will lose everything. And he will have nothing to tie him over in the next 1 to 2 months. So he will end up in an even worse situation.
He'll end up negative, underwater.
Yes.
Okay. And Julia, at what point, if someone's like Steve and he's doing this gambling, at what point do they then consider themselves like a compulsive gambler?
Okay, for someone to be sort of diagnosed with a gambling disorder, we will need a time frame of 12 months. So they would need to have within 12 months, they have a preoccupation with gambling. Preoccupation would be like when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they think of would be, I have to go and gamble. Or I have to go and buy the bet, Toto or 4D, or even make a trip to the casino. So then they have this tolerance. So meaning they will spend more money and more time in gambling. They will have tolerance, they will have withdrawal. So when they cannot gamble, they will feel very distressed, they will be very irritated. And then it will also cause impairment to their life as well. So like interpersonal relationship with their family members, it may cause problem at work. It may cause problem to their social lives, their leisure activity. So he may give up all this activity in order to pursue gambling. Then it will become problematic. Some may even commit offenses to sort of feed their gambling habit, like stealing from their employers.
And Julia, right now we just have one question from the audience. Oh, two in fact. So one of it was, what are these interventions that can happen for someone who is addicted to gambling or spending?
Not limited to gambling or behavioral addiction. Most of the addict actually, they don't think they have a problem. So they sort of live in denial. They don't think they have problem. So usually only when they hit the rock bottom, then they will seek help. Or because of their gambling behavior that affect the rest of the family, then the family may be the one who go to seek help first, and then sort of invite the gamblers to seek help as well. So there are gambling counseling available for them to go to.
Okay. And Julia, on the second question from the audience, so the audience member was sharing that this is such a risk-taking type of behavior, like gambling, for example. Is this risk-taking behavior more apparent in the male population compared to the female population in your observation?
Not necessarily. Research found that actually there are like two main groups of gamblers. So one would be the Asian group, so they are more male than female. So they would be betting of like a high stake game like casino or horses or card games. And then the other group, we call them escape gambler, I think. So it's more emotion related. So there would be more females. So because maybe they are in distress, then
I see.
they could be depressed. They could be having a lot of issues at home, and then they want to gamble, have an escape, and then they will go and gamble, sort of to have a relief emotionally.
I see. So from your view, actually, it is almost both genders
are equally vulnerable.
I see. Okay. Wow. Okay, that's fortunate to hear for me. Okay. Next item here. If we can move the scenario forward. So with the loan, Steve, managed to fight back that little voice in his head for asking him to put the 1 month expenses and try to double or triple it. And he continued trying to look for a job. But unfortunately, he was still jobless, even after a few more months. And with the money that he borrowed is exhausted, he and his wife are still continuing to take on odd jobs, and their income can barely now cover their daily necessities. And Steve has now already defaulted on 2 months of utility bills, as well as the family's mobile plan. So that's how tough it is. Like the mobile phone and internet is one of the last thing that we don't pay, right? But he already seemed to have reached that stage. Yeah. So now he's been receiving a lot of letters asking him to make payment, and some are yellow color, some are pink color, or very bright colors to ask him to pay. He now even feels a little bit anxious every time he got to pick up a phone, because he knows if he pick up the phone call, it's probably someone asking him to pay the bills. He is now really worried, but that's just the stage where he just received a lot of phone calls. Wei Yi, at this stage, what do you think would be appropriate? I mean, from a legal point of view, what would be an appropriate course of action for Steve?
Well, I mean, there's no, okay, at this point in time, let's just say if it's phone calls, you can expect that the next thing that's going to happen, you're going to have it in writing. You're going to have the demand come in writing, letters of demand from the banks. It would be very unwise for him to ignore them. I think the key is to reach out to the creditor, the bank, or any creditor. I mean, assuming that they are legal creditors, to reach out and to see if something can be arranged, something can be worked out. Because, it's no guarantee that something can be worked out, but it is certainly a guarantee that if you ignore it, it will only just get worse. Interest will start rolling. And I think generally, banks, legal creditors, there's a lot more sympathy if you came forward and you tried to sort out the situation, rather than just leave it, ignore, and then they're just going after you with absolutely no response. There are things out there with banks called debt consolidation plans, and I think you can try to have this. You can seek out one of the banks to apply for this. I think it helps because I think, if I'm not wrong, the overall interest will probably be lower if you went on a plan like this. So do something about it. The main thing that I want to say is you do something about it. Don't ignore it. It can only get worse.
It won't go away.
It won't go away. I mean,
like
by the time they decide to issue you a letter of demand, they're not going to go away.
I see.
Yeah.
And Huey Min, what do you see? Because I think Wei Yi just mentioned something called a debt consolidation plan, and on your side you have a debt repayments kind of scheme.
Okay, let me put it this way. Okay, now I think one thing we all have to accept the fact, to work out any repayment plan, the person need to have a source of income. Because when I make a proposal to pay, I must have a source of income to pay, right? Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point of me putting on the proposal, even though my creditors approve. Okay, but yes, we mentioned about the debt consolidation plan. That will be that could be one option for people who actually holding on to a job and have a debt issue. Okay, so what the person can do is consolidate his debt owing to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 banks, depending, okay, into one. So it's easier to remember one date and pay one bank than to remember 5 different due dates and making payment to 5 different banks, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
so it's easier to manage. And like what Wei Yi say, one is consolidated. The terms and conditions will be more attractive. So if let's say I got 5 banks credit cards, I consolidate into one DCP with the bank. The interest rate will not be as high as 24-28%. How high or how low will it be? It depends on the bank. Okay, and sometimes even with the same bank, they may treat different customers differently. Okay, so but like what we say, if I have a debt issue, I should deal with it instead of like what Julia say, be in denial, because the denial will not help me. You know, it will only make things worse, because if my creditors cannot find me, they will think that I'm trying to run away.
Exactly.
Right. And if for people who want to try to run away or not take responsibility, they will come down hard on me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And take legal action sooner, faster. But if I go to my creditors and explain my situation, they may be more understanding.
Yeah.
Now, they will not say not want me to pay, because it's their fiduciary duty to collect back whatever loan that they have given out to me, right? So they will still expect me to pay, but perhaps they will not take legal action so fast as compared to someone who don't even answer their phone calls.
Yes.
So that's one thing to be very mindful about. If I have that issue, I should not shun away from my creditors. I need to answer all phone calls. I need to read all letters. I know it's tough, okay, because I remember many years ago there was one case. The person, when they came to get credit counseling with us, he brought in one plastic full of letters not open.
Oh,
because these are all banks, you know, letters.
Yes.
In the earlier days, you still can see which bank on the envelopes. Okay, nowadays, of course, you don't get to see that anymore. But basically, the long and short is, to deal with a debt problem is not to run away. Okay, it's not. Okay, it's always good to let the creditors know your situation and ask for indulgence, you know, but I think to really solve the problem, I have to, if I want to pay back, you know, I have to make sure that I have enough income to pay back.
It's true.
Yeah. So and
Steve is out of a job.
Yeah, if I'm out of job, then I may have, okay, pardon me, I'm not sure was Steve being choosy, or was he just plain unlucky? You know, I don't know what's the reason.
That's
Or
true.
is it because he was in the industry that is a sunset industry that you can hardly find similar jobs anymore? So in other words, he may have to be, like I said, be a little bit more open-minded. That's what I mentioned about the career conversion program. That one is through the WSG. All right. So maybe go to see a career counselor, you know, to or register yourself with some agencies that can perhaps help you find some jobs, something like that. Depending, I don't know what he does or what he used to do. Because without a source of income, you don't talk about paying back debts. You can't even feed the family.
Yes.
And you cannot keep borrowing. You know, I mean, even if your friends and relatives are very understanding, they cannot feed your family for you. See, so the thing is, I feel strongly about, you know, getting an employment is still the most important and most effective.
It's like, even though he no choice, now he's reached a point where you have no choice, right?
Yeah,
you can't choose.
You can't choose.
Just got to just get over that harm, pay back the thing, and then start from fresh, and then maybe can go and choose another job. Something like that.
Something like that. Something like that. And like what we say, don't run from your creditor, you know, be contactable, talk to your creditor directly, ideally lah. I know it's not easy lah, okay.
Understand.
I think here we are assuming Steve is still very logical and rational.
Yes.
He's still very rational. Actually, he may not be a very good frame of mind.
Oh, that's true.
He may not make very good decision for himself at this stage. And he might even be a very impulsive person as well. So I think it would be helpful to seek help, to talk to someone so that he won't feel so stuck and desperate. So here we are assuming he's very rational. He can make the best decision for himself, but it may not be the case. It's already the 3rd or 4th month he has been unemployed already. So he could be quite depressed actually. He's very anxious. He's very depressed. He may not sleep well, eat well. the family member may not be very understanding, so he can be under a lot of stress and even suicidal.
Wow.
Wow.
What would you how would you advise someone like Steve in that kind of situation, or his family members?
I think for himself, he need to know his sort of usual coping style, whether he's the type that he always solve all the problem on his own, or whether he always go to someone to ask for advice, ask for help, or he's the type that I go to sleep, I think about it tomorrow.
I see.
Yeah, so it's more avoidant coping. Yeah, so also whether the family members are supportive and understanding, or they are all blaming him, why you become an employee, why you like this, why you like that.
Yeah.
That would be worse.
And if you are the family member, what can you do?
Actually, family members may also feel very helpless because like the two younger ones still in secondary school,
right?
the older boy really want to go to uni, then there's no money at home. Then the wife also may feel very helpless, cannot help the husband, although they are doing some odd jobs.
Yeah.
I just like to chime in here. I think in Singapore we do have many social service agencies that can provide support in one way or another, including helping out with some financial assistance,
short-term financial aid.
temporarily,
yeah,
and including helping the person to look for employment. But the thing is that we have to reach out first. If we hide at home, nobody is going to know that I have a problem if I just sit at home. So the thing is that, of course, there may be the pride issue. But I think sometimes we just remember, just because I need help, it's not a shameful thing. You know, when I'm able, when I'm stable, I can always pay it forward. You know, do donations, do volunteer work, you know, to help another person who is just down in his luck. So I think the family could actually go to the FSC, you know, the Family Service Center. All right. Just go there, tell them the situation, and they may assign a social worker to work on their case. That includes maybe counseling Steve, you know, hopefully help him to gain back some confidence and send him to WSG or whatever to see whether can help him to look for a job or do upskilling and things like that.
I see.
And maybe help the sons to see how to advise him how to apply for a student loan. But of course, with some probably need to find someone to be the guarantor and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are help. Just need to knock on the door and say that I need some advice and take it from there.
Okay.
Don't have to suffer in silence.
Yeah, I agree.
You're not. I mean, we are not
it's
alone.
not a shameful thing.
It's like I said. Yes, it can be a bit embarrassing, but the thing is that you can always pay it forward when you are okay.
Yes.
You know, by helping another family, by doing donation, by doing volunteer work for the old folks or whatever. Yeah, you can always do good because someone has done good for you.
Great. Nice. So if I can summarize, I think Wei Yi was sharing that don't ignore the problem, it won't go away, right? We gotta solve it. And Dr. Julia was sharing that the kind of pressure that they face is going to be very high. Don't be in denial, seek help from other people. And then Huey Min gave us a very inspirational speech about how we should take action, right? Take action to do something to improve Steve's current state. Whether it is taking short-term financial aid, whether it's accepting a job that maybe he don't really like, but just a temporary thing to tide him over. And then maybe find an alternative option, your PAO, find an alternative option for his son who's going to uni, right? Find a study loan. And it's very nicely here where we have one of the questions from the participants, specifically about the point on being a guarantor. So if Steve's son needs to go and take a study loan and Steve can't be the guarantor and the wife also can't be the guarantor, we are both odd job worker, right? Then they may have to ask maybe the uncle, auntie or some friends to be a guarantor. So our participants are asking, right, on being a guarantor, what are the risks that a guarantor would assume and what to look out for before being one?
Okay. Guarantors, whether it's study loans or like, you know, like what you mentioned earlier, like small business loans.
Yeah.
I think that so your liability only kicks in if there's a default. So maybe let's just talk about, confine it to a student loan. Usually, very often you will see that it will be an uncle or an auntie who is the guarantor for the student loan. And usually the terms of the loan are such that repayment does not begin until the student graduates. And I think I'm sure there's a bit of buffer time to find a job, whatnot. Unfortunately, the situation really is that if at that point in time, when repayment obligations start, so that this would be when the student has graduated and is working. Now, if the primary debtor,
The son.
yes, or actually, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the funds can come from anyone, but basically the primary debtor is taken to be repaying the loan. And if the repayment is not made, then unfortunately the guarantor will be responsible for that sum. And there's also the issue that very often, if there is any default, there's an acceleration of repayment.
So the entire 30,000-40,000 becomes due.
That is usually the case for commercial loans. Okay, for more commercial loans. For student loans, I'm not entirely familiar with it in terms of the various permutations of terms and conditions. There may be some flexibility, some level of flexibility in terms of not accelerating the entire amount. But very often, I mean, if you're looking about guarantors in other situations, more commercial type of loans, there's usually an acceleration. And sometimes the entire amount may become payable upfront. So that definitely, you have to understand that as a guarantor, there are some risks. I mean, yes, you are helping out someone, but you must also understand what your obligations can be.
Yeah. So if the person doesn't pay, you pay.
Yes.
Sorry, can I ask
Yeah.
just a confirmation from Wei Yi? Am I correct to say, although a loan may be guaranteed by 3 different parties, but if anything go wrong?
Yes, it will be very often. Okay, it all depends on the terms of the guarantee and the terms of the loan. Now, it probably will not be the case for a student loan, but in commercial loans, very often the banks, for example, a bank or the creditor will reserve a right that the bank or whatever creditor can actually go after the guarantor first before the primary debtor. Very often you will see this sort of a reservation of right, because sometimes it is easier to go after the guarantor or the primary debtor, they realize has no money. You see, so very often a commercial entity will always reserve this right. It doesn't mean that you wait until you cannot recover the loan from the primary debtor, then you go after the guarantor. That probably will not be the case for a student loan, because that's not really a loan of a truly commercial nature.
Agree. But I want to follow up on what Huey Min said, because Huey Min said, what happens if there are more than one guarantor,
You
right?
go after any.
So one concept which I hear a lot of people say is, if I have 3 guarantors, does it mean everyone split 1/3? Or does it mean
creditor.
anyone is liable for the full sum?
If you're talking about pure commercial loan, chances are what is in the agreement will be that the bank, or rather the creditor, can choose to go after any of the 3 for any amount that they want, up to the amount
Full
of the
owing.
loan. Yes.
And that's what we call a joint and severable.
Joint.
guarantee.
It's joint.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not several, it's joint.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a joint liability and it's for the full amount.
So that's something that a guarantor should be aware of, right?
Yes.
That doesn't mean more people sign on a guarantor means
Yes.
you got off the hook, right?
It is possible for the terms to state that each of you is only obliged up to a certain amount. It is possible.
But not what
but
you see in practice, not common.
because commercial entities, in order to maximize the chance of covering your loan, what the lawyer will advise them is you go after, you reserve the right to pursue all 3 for any of the 3 for the full amount.
Okay. Well, that sounds quite scary. Being a guarantor is not simple.
Yes, absolutely. So do read through the terms,
Okay, great. Now we move forward into the scenario. So this will be our last step of the scenario. We in the current scenario is when he just received a lot of letters. Now the next scenario is after 3 months, Steve is still jobless, and he was still unable to clear the debts from the phone bill, the utility bill, the amount that he was owing to the money lenders and some of his credit cards. And now he receives a lawyer letter demanding for repayment. And then next, there was also a court letter that was delivered to his house, where he had to sign for it. Then he received it, then he opened it, he was like, oh, it's a court letter. And then when he searched the internet, I think he sees a lot of terms like debt consolidation plan, which was something Wei Yi you mentioned before. Then there was like a debt management program and a debt repayment scheme, and then this big scary word bankruptcy. So let's kind of take it in terms, right? Wei Yi, what does all these terms mean? This debt consolidation, debt repayment scheme, and all that. What does all these mean?
Okay, debt consolidation, I had mentioned it earlier, and so Huey Min. That's something that you can proactively apply from the bank. However, the other concept that you mentioned, which is the debt repayment scheme, now this is not something that you can actively apply. So what usually happens is this. Sometimes you can't pay off the debt, and the bank, I suppose, has considered, or the creditor has considered that it's given you enough leeway, and they make an application of bankruptcy against Steve in this case. Now, when you go before the court, and of course, can I just say that if there's a document asking you to attend court on a certain day, please attend.
Don't run away from the problem. Yeah, you said
that. Because the courts are sympathetic. Okay, so in the recent years, there's this concept of debt repayment scheme. So what happens is when there is a bankruptcy application made against an individual, the court will basically have the relevant authorities, basically the official assignee, consider whether or not this person is suitable for this scheme, this debt repayment scheme. So I think the idea is for the potential respondent in the bankruptcy application to pay off his debt over a period of a maximum of, I believe it's 5 years. So instead of being made bankrupt, you go under this scheme where you are allowed time to repay the debt at a monthly amount that can manage. But herein lies the problem for Steve. Like Huey Min said, you do need to have a source of income in order for you to qualify for this scheme. So if the court assesses that you're suitable to be under this scheme, then you can go under it, and the bankruptcy application will be put aside for as long as you're on the scheme. And if you complete it, if you successfully complete the repayment period, then you're free. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the meantime, creditors can come after you if you are under this
scheme. So it's sort of giving you some breathing room.
That's right. So like if you're faced with another demand, then you will report this to the official assignee, and then whatever accommodation needs to be made, for this additional debt, it can be sorted out. But again, the problem really is there needs to be a source of income in order to service the repayment.
Okay.
Can I just say something?
Please.
Okay. For people who are really facing a debt issue, I really urge you to explore all your options before you decide what you're going to do. Okay. What I meant is that there are many different ways to address the debt issue. Okay. Talking to your creditors is always one way, and it could be a very effective way, meaning that make known to the creditors, okay, I'm going to use banks, okay, for people to understand, because most people, consumer, basically they owe the banks.
Yes.
Unlike a business may owe their supplier.
Yes.
Okay, so if I were to owe the bank and I really have difficulties in servicing, it is always advisable for me to let the bank know. Okay, some banks, they do have their in-house debt relief plan. Sometimes, if it's just owe one bank, then perhaps if they can offer you a debt relief plan, it may work for me, since I only owe one bank. Okay, but if I were to owe multiple banks, okay, then it's a bit different. All right, but nonetheless, letting the bank know and seeking help from the bank is always an option that a bank customer can just go to talk to the bank, okay? When I say go, call them up. Okay.
Yes.
Or when they call me, I talk to them, okay?
Yes.
Because nowadays you don't go and knock on the bank door per se. Okay, another option, of course, is that to think seriously, do I have anything that of value? You know, that I can,
Jewelry.
yes.
Wedding ring.
Okay, no, okay.
Don't go under that stage yet.
So
Okay,
sad.
yeah, okay, it depends, okay? I think
Yeah.
first thing, in fact, before I go to the bank,
Yeah.
stop, take a look, how much I earn, how much I need to leave. That means I draw up my own cash flow, you know, how much I bring home every month, how much I actually need to spend every month to take care of my family needs, and nothing luxurious, okay? Just cover the basic necessities, okay? And then, is that sufficient to service my debts? If I can, then what I need to do is stop using my credit facilities. Means no more credit card use for the whatever months until I pay off or pay down, you know? Yeah. And that will be the easiest, right? Because I just need to manage my cash flow, spend less than what I earn, and use all my spare cash to pay my loans. In fact, I should pay my loan first before I spend the money. That will be more effective. That means if I need to service my my outstanding balance, assuming I got a $30,000 credit card bills, and assuming it's 3% minimum payment per month, 30,000, 3% is at least $900 per month, right? Okay, so whatever income I bring home, set aside to pay the 900 first. Stop using my credit card. Now, if I do that, and I'm not really in default, frankly speaking, it's a matter of time. I'll see my outstanding being paid down, but I must keep paying the $900 every month, even though the bill come in and tell me that I need to pay only maybe $280 because I already paid down some, right?
Yes.
If I stick to the current original or initial minimum payment amount, okay, and I don't put in new debt, I don't put in new charges, I can see the debt size come down. Okay, so that will be the most ideal, You need to go and ask for help and whatever.
Yes.
Pay on my own using, but of course require a lot of discipline.
A lot of discipline,
and
yes.
hopefully also things are smooth. There's no job hiccups, you know what I mean, and no other issues. But if that doesn't work, okay, I really need help, then talk to my bank. Okay, if I just owe one bank, even two, I think that may still work out something. But if I really owe multiple banks, I can understand it can be challenging. Okay, because coordination and things like that, and some banks may not have in-house. So I would suggest that there is no harm to come to Credit Counselling Singapore, that is CCS, my organization. Okay, we do credit counselling. Similarly, we will do we will help the person to drop a budget, to set aside money to take care of his living needs, at the same time money that requires to put up a payment proposal to his creditors. Okay, now assuming okay, his creditors accepted his repayment proposal, which is what we put up, which is known as the Debt Management Program, DMP. As long as he pay in time, in full, every month, no banks will chase him, because there's already an understanding that there is this repayment arrangement for the next average 6 years or so. Okay, as long as he make the payment,
I see.
the creditors won't come and disturb him anymore.
Yeah.
So he can see himself become debt-free one day.
6
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
Or even faster.
Yeah. We
Hopefully.
have clients who actually pay back faster because they are so determined. Whenever they get bonuses, they top up payment.
Wow.
So
Okay.
instead of paying back in 6 years, they pay back maybe in 4.5 years. You know, we
I
pay
see.
increment, he top up
Yes.
payment, with bonuses,
Yes.
he top up payment. So his repayment tenure shorter. Shorter. Okay. Now, of course, what we said about the debt repayment scheme is definitely another option. Okay. But it's not something we apply for, because in order to be considered under the DRS, I have to be sued, or I go and self-file for bankruptcy first. Now, whether I being sued or I self-file for bankruptcy, there is a public record. Okay, and to me is that of course, unless you really got no other ways to pay back, then you may have to explore this, because you couldn't take the pressure anymore. Which we have cases that the person is really not in any position to pay back the amount that he owes, and he's so stressed out because there's so many calls, so many letters, that he's almost breaking down and things like that. So, of course, bankruptcy and DRS so-called options. But before we choose that option, we should consider the other ways that is non-legal related. Right?
Agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, if not very sure what to do, can always talk to someone who knows, or someone who know about how to repay the debt. I mean, like I said, we have been around for 19 years. I was just sharing with Wei Yi before I realized, it's so long already. And we have been assisting. I think we have counseled more than 35,000 individuals who have a debt issue, and of which slightly more than 26,000 are actually able to work out a repayment arrangement. And among them, we have, I think, 9,000 or so individuals has already fully paid off their debt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it works, you see. I mean, but it requires discipline. Okay. Yeah. So don't lose hope. Just because I have a debt issue doesn't mean that I will have to become a bankrupt. Okay. I mean, there's always alternatives to think about. Until you exhausted all the alternatives, then of course, bankruptcy is the last resort, and DRS could be one of them.
And Huey Min, I want to take you up on this because there has been like some of those moneylender shops or some office shops which also claims to offer this kind of like debt consolidation or debt repayment, and then you got to pay them some fee, or you got to like how does that? What's the difference between coming to Credit Counselling Singapore versus going to one of those shops that claim that they can help you replan all your debt?
All right. CCS is we are a registered charity and a member of National Council of Social Service. We are not for profit, but that said doesn't mean that we do not need an income to run the operations. Okay, but our service a lot of times is free, meaning that we offer information talk on how to manage debt on a weekly basis. Anyone interested can just go to our website and sign up for the talk, which is conducted. You can do online, virtual, you can do in person. Of course, in person, you get to talk to the speaker, to ask questions and things like that. In the talk, we actually discuss about the do's and don'ts when dealing with that problem. So we share, what to do, what not to do, like not
run away.
Not run away. Answer the phone calls. This is a must-do thing. Okay. Stop using your credit facility if you can. These are things that not to do. Otherwise, I just get myself into more trouble. We also talk about what are the common collection actions taken by the creditors, like what we see. Phone calls, letter. Still doesn't work right. Okay. The next thing could be legal actions, meaning that I may receive a letter or demand by the lawyer. That one is still not really legal action, yes. It's a writ of summons.
Yes,
right?
you will get a bankruptcy application. That would be truly when, well, actually, no, they will serve, the first step actually is to serve what they call a statutory demand. Okay, but I think for a lot of lay persons, it doesn't look different from any regular letter of demand. I mean, there are some technicalities to it, but ultimately it's still a letter. You're not hauled off to court yet. I think when it really starts is when the application is made. And you're asked to attend court for the first time.
Yeah. And my understanding there is another legal action, which is they serve the person a writ of summons followed by a writ of seizure and sale or a garniture order. Okay.
No, those are different. Those are if you're talking about there's a court action and there's a judgment.
Yes.
After the judgment happens.
Yes.
Then you are looking at these methods, which is what we call enforcement methods. I think in terms of bankruptcy, what immediately follows from that first bankruptcy application is really that you're asked to attend court. Okay, but really, it's not the end of the world because the courts are sympathetic. Okay, I think over COVID also, I mean, there's a lot of awareness, like that these are years that have made it difficult for some members of the society. So yes, there's a lot of sympathy. There are a lot of the court. In fact, the court will proactively explore all avenues possible. They will encourage the creditors to consider: can you settle? Can there be some kind of repayment scheme you can come to? And then, of course, there's the DRS, which is now something a bit more formal. So there's still a way to go, some way to go before you're actually made bankrupt. and you have to suffer the effects of bankruptcy.
And so, Wei Yi, on this point, right, we have one question from the audience, which is that, so what kind of scenario, what kind of circumstances can the creditors, whether they are licensed money lenders or the banks, or what kind of circumstances can they just come in and apply and then take possession of your flat, or take all your furniture away, take your TV away? Like what kind of circumstances should a creditor should a debtor expect?
Okay, I won't address this in the context of like a commercial legal claim, okay, which is, for
Let's say
example, when it
thief.
comes, Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
So this can only possibly happen if a bankruptcy application has been made against him, and a bankruptcy order is actually issued by the court. And the order is made against him. But even then, okay, what happens actually, if you're talking about a route of bankruptcy, is that these methods of enforcement will not be used by your creditor. Because if at the end of the day, you are made a bankrupt and there's an order, so what happens is the official assignee will sort of take charge of all your assets. Okay, creditors cannot come after you anymore. Okay, but there are, of course, it's not great. There are many negative effects of bankruptcy, but creditors cannot come after you anymore. If a creditor wants you to pay back a debt, they have to file a proof of debt with the official assignee. So in that sense, the official assignee will sort of take charge of all your assets and be in charge of apportioning the repayment amongst your creditors. To put it in a very simple way. What you're talking about is a writ of seizure and sale, writ of possession. That usually will not happen in a bankruptcy situation. These sort of things will happen if you are sued in court for a claim. For example, if you breach the contract, okay, and the other party has sued you in court and has obtained judgment. Okay, and the judgment is that you must pay back the claimant X amount of money. And you don't do that. Then what happens then is the claimant will apply to court for these methods of enforcement. Enforcement meaning try to recover what the court has ordered. And these will be the methods that are used.
But can a money lender also sue you in court and then get a judgment and then give a writ of seizure of sale?
Yes, it's possible. So they will sue on the contract.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they get a judgment, then yes, these are enforcement methods. Okay, this is a bit technical, so I don't really want to go into it. But actually, bankruptcy application is a method of enforcement. You see, so so if I have a judgment, I can, and it's against an individual, okay, not a company, can have methods of enforcement like writ of seizure and sale. You enter the premises and you seized the property.
You take the TV, you take the sofa, you take all that.
And it gets auctioned off. And whatever funds that are made available from the auction are given to the creditor.
And this can happen even before bankruptcy.
No. This is how do you put this? It is a separate
alternative.
It's a separate route. Like bankruptcy, bankruptcy is one of the options a creditor can use for enforcement. So writ of seizure and sale, a bankruptcy, a garnishee order, these are all methods of enforcement.
Yes.
So it's, how do you put this? It's not, the writ of seizure and sale is not a result of bankruptcy.
Yes.
Yes. If that makes it clear.
Yeah. Maybe I can share a little bit of the cases we see.
Yes.
All right. No, I mean what we used to see. Okay. Is that when the debtor owes below the threshold.
Yeah.
Of bankruptcy, the creditor likely to choose that writ of seizure
to target specific asset rather than make him bankrupt.
No, because you need, currently my understanding is that to sue someone for bankruptcy or to sell for bankruptcy, I must owe at least $15,000. Yes. Okay, so if the debt size is less than 15,000, what the creditor may do, is to, issue a writ of summons and then get a judgment on the debt owed, and then may then apply for a writ of seizure and sale. And then what happens is that, of course, if the person cannot work out a payment arrangement or did not make the payment, someone will go to his house to tag the movable assets, and then still cannot work out a payment solution, or he did not make the payment even though there was an arrangement. Someone will go to his house to auction away those tag items, and then whatever money recovered from there will of course go to pay the creditors. That is my understanding. But these are for situations when the debt size is below the bankruptcy so-called threshold.
I will also add, actually, sometimes it's not because it's below the threshold. Creditors do that because the act of the seizure is very distressing.
Yes.
For the debtor. So sometimes that enforcement method may be chosen even if the debt is enough to make a bankruptcy application. Because it is very distressing for the debtor. And if it's the family home, then the family members, will be there, and it is just all around very distressing. And that's actually why sometimes this enforcement method is chosen.
Agree with you. I think there were cases that the debt size, even though the creditors has the right to so-called sue him for bankruptcy, but they chose writ of seizure instead, because bankruptcy is more quiet in a way, meaning that the person go to the court, right? But writ of seizure instead is very open, I mean, because they really come to the house, and it's not just one person. And sometimes, the Kalang Kuning man will come and auction away the things. So-called will come and buy the things, not auction away. Will come and buy the items. So neighbors may see. So it's very distressing for the family. And the kids at home, the old folks at home, I mean, if they didn't know that there's that issue, it's traumatic, okay? It's really traumatic. So these are potential actions that may be taken by the creditors, okay? Then of course, I said, I mean, at the top we will share all this information about managing the debt. Then if the person know what to do, he can move on, because we also share on the different ways to address the debt issue, including talking to the banks, raising funds, through sales of assets, or perhaps borrowing from someone that not going to charge you interest, and of course, including our debt management program, including the debt consolidation plan, including, of course, bankruptcy and DRS if the person is suitable for DRS. So after the talk, if the person know what to do, he can go ahead and do what he needs to do. But if he really want to talk to someone, that means our credit counselor, they can submit their counseling request package to us, meaning there is a form to fill up, there is supporting documents like income statement, CPF statement, credit bureau report, submit to us, and we'll fix a one-to-one session with the person. And that means that the whole our credit counselor will be talking to him to help him to understand, like I say, work out a budget, the cash flow, and to identify his resources, identify what is the most suitable solution for him. And assuming he is suitable to work out a DMP, right, to us, and he wants it, he must able and willing, want to pay, got money to pay, and want us to put up the DMP for him, then we will put it up. And once we put it up, it will be up to his creditors to review and approve. And I'm pleased to say that so far the banks are very supportive, because we have this arrangement with them for many years. So very often they will accept. And now, once the creditor accept, that means the ball is in the borrower's court, because the proposal is put up by him, right? We are just intermediary to help him to present his case. So he has to, the borrower would have to make payment based on what he has proposed and accepted by the creditors. And if he make payment every month in full, on time, nobody will come and call him anymore. And after, like I said, a period of time, average about 6-7 years, he can see himself become debt free. But if he can speed up by paying more often, when he receive his bonus or he got pay increment, he can even see the repayment tenure should be shortened.
Great. Thanks, Huey Min.
Welcome.
And now it's a nice time for us to move into a Q&A session. I know we've been taking some of the questions as and when it comes in. And now, please feel free to continue having some of your questions sent in. I will pick a few that we have here. Some of them are circling around the themes of who becomes responsible for the debt. like for example, Steve takes all these loans, there has been questions like, what happened? Does the family members become obligated to pay for the debt, right? The people might pressure the family member and say, hey, your father owe money, you have to pay. Your wife, your husband owe money, you have to pay. They may come up with these kind of ideas. And then also secondly, maybe what happens if Steve pass away? Then what? Then does it mean that the debt will go down to the children and the family? I think these are some of the questions that has been coming up. Would love to hear some of your thoughts on Huey Min and Wei Yi. Please.
Okay, I just share based on my understanding.
Yes.
If I did not sign as a joint borrower
Yes.
or a guarantor in the loan contract, I will not be responsible. So if Steve is the only one who signed the contract, so Steve is the only one responsible for the repayment of the debt. But I understand because we sometimes also receive queries from help.
Yes.
Okay, then they will say that my so and so pass on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the bank is calling us. Am I responsible to pay back? Then the point will be that if you're not a joint borrower, then there is no responsibility. However, my understanding is that if the person has passed on, okay, there's estate. And the estate normally is so-called either the executor or the administrator will be normally a family members. So my understanding is that the creditor can go to the administrator or executor of the estate to ask for payment of the debt owed by the deceased. But I need to confirm on this.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's talk about first when the person is living. Okay, so I mean, as Huey Min said, if it's only the person who has signed on whatever contract, whatever documentation, he or she is responsible for the loan. I do have enough faith that legal creditors, they will not, make demands and suggest that anybody else in the family banks most certainly will never do that. Okay, so suggest that anybody else in the family should be obliged to pay the loan directly to the bank. I mean, you can help, your father or your mother, earn some money, and you can help pay the loan, but it is not on the person who is not the debtor to have the obligation to repay the loan. Now, if the debtor passes on, we'll have what you call his estate, which is basically the assets that he had owned at the point in time when he passed away. Yes, if there are loans, there is an obligation for the assets of the estate to be used to first pay off all these loans to the various creditors before there can be any distribution of the remainder assets to the beneficiaries. Now, of course, we mentioned the issue of a joint loan, for example, where there's joint liability. Unfortunately, if that's the case, usually the surviving other debtor will become liable.
Or in the case of a guarantor, right?
Yes.
Which is also very nicely linked to one of our next audience members' questions. So she asks that my client's husband took a large loan of 200K plus, and the client is the guarantor.
Okay.
So the client's husband, so I guess the client is a wife lah. Yeah. So to what extent will the wife have to pay or declare bankrupt?
I couldn't tell you offhand because it really depends on the terms of the original loan and the terms of the guarantee that she has signed. I couldn't tell you offhand. It really depends. The rights and obligations are governed by the contract. But it is possible. It is possible. Like, for example, in the worst case scenario, the creditor, the bank, has reserved the right to pursue the guarantor for the loan, even without attempting to recover the loan from the primary debtor. Then yes, she could potentially be facing the consequences of non-repayment.
Okay. Scary situation, yeah. Guarantor or joint borrowers, right? We really have to be careful what we get ourselves into.
Yes.
Right? And with that, thank you, Wei Yi and Huey Min and Julia for having such an interesting conversation now here with us. I would like to invite each one of you to maybe share one key takeaway that we have for tonight for the benefit of our audience. Perhaps starting with Wei Yi?
Maybe there's something that lawyers will just tell people a lot in general, which is please read what you're signing. Please read what you're signing. It really does matter. It may be very cumbersome, and you may feel that, oh God, I don't understand, what's written in there. But actually you do. You will understand. You will understand to a certain extent. Maybe you will not understand the full technicalities of it, but very often people will understand enough to see the red flags. So do read.
Do read.
Yeah, before you sign.
Huey Min.
Well, I mentioned about PAO. I think
PAO.
Yes, the PAO thing, just before you take up a new loan, just think, why are you taking it up? Okay. And if you really want to take it up, then think of how much you can afford to pay. All right. If my spare cash is 200, don't go and sign up a loan that require me to pay 300 per month.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course the options. Sometimes taking up the loan it may not be the best option. So just consider alternatives and maybe wait for a few months, save up the money, and then just go and purchase. It may work better. You know what I mean?
Great.
Yeah. So this is for people who thinking of borrowing.
Julia.
As a psychologist and a forensic psychologist in particular, I think seek help and do not commit any criminal activities.
Great. What a fantastic session. I'm sure all of you in the audience are now so much more prepared if you're ever in a situation where you've got to deal with creditors. Tomorrow, we'll be sharing with you our next webinar, which is workplace harassment and how do I deal with it. So there you unravel the complexities of workplace harassment and pick up practical strategies to confront and overcome it. Panelists will be sharing more on what you can do to cultivate a culture of inclusivity and respect at your workplace. And that's how you're going to ensure that every employee's rights are protected. So this and many more webinars are available as part of the Law Awareness Week at CDC 2023. You can scan the QR code here on the screen or visit the website go.gov.sg/LawCDC 2023 to register for the webinar and the many other webinars available. At the end of this webinar, a survey form will pop up on your screen for your completion. So please fill it up. We'll really appreciate your comments that you have. Lastly, after tonight's fantastic sharing from our fellow panelists, and if you find that you require legal guidance on your legal issue, please write to help@probono.sg. And we'd like to express our gratitude to our panelists today, Wei Yi, Huey Min, and Julia, for having such a insightful session and such an interesting session for us, knowing how better to be prepared if we're ever in a situation, whether ourselves or someone we love is in a situation where they have to deal with creditors. So thank you so much for having us.
Likewise, thank you for
being here.
moderating.
And with that, on behalf of Pro Bono SG, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, and we wish you a great week ahead.